Coxie, obviously a disappointing result last week. How's the team kind of reflected on that and knowing that, as you kind of said in the presser, that probably means September's definitely off the cards now?
Yeah, it's a little bit different this week. We reflected on the game and reviewed the GWS game like we would any other game. What worked well certainly in the first half, and the second half how we need to improve in those areas. How we gave them opportunities to score, and then from there it's about making sure that we get them ready for this remaining block, which is 4 weeks, and there's still plenty to get out of it.
Obviously, we've seen in patches that your best is very good this year.
Yep.
The first half was the perfect example of that. But again, it was a bit of a story of the season that just the intensity dropped off, like in games like against the Gold Coast and others this year, where we've seen just the team, the intensity hasn't quite been there. Is that the main point that you've drawn out of that second half, or was there something else that came out of it?
No, you're exactly right, and that's around the ball. It's also when they have the ball, how quickly can we get our desperation to get the ball back. That's probably one area that certainly slipped when you give GWS with their potency as well an opportunity to drop away with intensity. That's what happens. And, the ability for them to score at will, probably the second half was way too high and too frequent. So, that's also about pressure around the source to try and get every exit as unpredictable as possible, but they were shoulders out for a lot of it, which wasn't a great result.
We've seen off the back of that result a couple of decisions in terms of players like Logan McDonald that he will sit out the rest of the season. Both Joels, obviously injuries relating to that, but are out for the season. Is it a little bit about managing those guys where they probably could have pushed back, but knowing, okay, we can give them a bit more rest, give them a bit more time to get their bodies right for 26 and beyond now?
Oh, both Joels wouldn't have got back no matter what. So they were decisions, the injury when they're 8-week injuries. And then the Logan one was more about building him to a stage where he would have played a half of VFL this week maybe, and was never going to play an AFL game for the remainder of the season. So for us, it's a decision to make sure that, all right, we'll take a short step back to make sure that he can still train for the rest of this season, get his ankle as well as it possibly can get, so he can have a really strong off-season to lead into pre-season. So for mine, half a game of VFL versus a sustained training block, that's the better option.
Are there any other guys in the team at the moment who might be carrying things that you could look to make similar decisions on? And I guess on the flip side, there's so many young guys in that VFL team who are probably pushing in that frame for a debut that you'd like to give a chance across the 4 weeks, or is that not something you're really approaching yet?
There's no players at the minute that are, we need to put them on ice or have surgery early. So players that are going through things, they've been able to manage that, and they'll continue to do that. So for us, it's not about, as we are that far from putting the cue in the rack, it's about trying to make sure that we get as much as we possibly can out for the remainder 4 weeks, and whether it's individually, but certainly collectively as a team, we need to try and work on some things going forward.
Is there some guys playing for their futures here over the next few weeks?
I think there's always, players are out of contract. And players are always doing that. And one thing you want to make sure that no matter what level you're playing at, you're trying to perform the best way you possibly can, and that's no different. So, players that are contracted, also uncontracted, we need to play as well as we possibly can for this 4 weeks.
When you're speaking about the intensity that second half on the weekend, is it hard to cop given that intensity is a bit of a given? Like you expect guys to bring that every quarter, every half?
Yeah, I think, and what you do find out is that if a couple drop away, and you don't need to drop away too far, but that slight drop off, and if it's a weight of numbers thing that most are doing that, momentum in certainly a lot of sports at the minute is really prevalent. So it's about trying to halt that and then get that intensity back first to minimise the damage that they can do.
What point in that third quarter did you start to think, we're in a bit of trouble here? Was your moment where you thought, was it early on, or when did it hit you?
I thought probably even the first one that they kicked, we responded with McInerney, and that was probably the only time in a scramble I saw that intensity, and the result come from that. But elsewhere it wasn't there. So probably from that early part, and then once they sort of got 3 or 4, the ability to be able to certainly try and restrict and get numbers back, and it just fueled a lot of their stuff as well. So, yeah, we need to work on it. We spoke about it, and the remainder of 4 weeks is a chance that when sides get momentum, we need to do some things differently.
There's been a few reports about contracts being offered to guys at the moment, and obviously, as Jeff mentioned, a few futures in the air. One guy we haven't really heard much about is Dean Rampy. What's his kind of position at the moment in terms of, obviously 35, a senior member of this defensive line, but is it still your intention that he's got footy to play and he wants to play next year, or is it sort of a decision he's still making at the moment?
No, well, we speak to Ramps regularly about how he's going, and that's more about the short term. How's he going? How's his body? What training loads do we have to do? How you pulling up from games? We still know what Dane can do as a footballer, and that's really important. But from, when you're 35 or the age, then, he's played at this football club for a long period of time. We'll continue having conversations, and then we'll address at the end of the year what exactly that looks like. And both parties in everything need to be fully committed to go, we think your best is still good enough, and him going, I actually still have the real desperation to play AFL footy. So far he said that, which is good news, but we'll work through that once the season settles.
Just on the defence as well, Tom McCartan obviously
Yep.
a test probably has to get through training today to kind of and pull up really well to play against Essendon. How has he been sort of post-concussion? Obviously having that extra week as well, I imagine would have helped.
Yeah, he's been really good, and that 12 days become real tight. So it was a chance to settle for a couple of days throughout the protocols, and he's done everything we've asked. So you're exactly right. Get through today's training, hopefully do that well, pull up well later on this evening and tomorrow morning, and if he does that, he's ticked every box and will be available to play.
I know there's a fair bit of interest in young Jesse Detoli as well, in terms of a first-round draft pick who obviously had that back injury but has built up a really nice body of work now in the VFL. Is he someone who is close to an AFL debut? Does he need to put a bit of work in terms of like the body and match fitness first? Where's he kind of sitting at the moment?
Yeah, well, I think he had 5 months where he wasn't doing anything. And obviously we know Jesse's got a huge amount of talent, but for us it's about making sure that, first of all, he's performing well, which he's doing at VFL level, and you don't want to just give a kid an opportunity if they're not ready. So that's what we're talking about every week we do that. He's improved his performances, which has been really pleasing. Now it's a matter of, can that withstand an AFL game? And we'll continue to talk through that this week, next week, the week after. So, he's got talent, we know that. And how quickly he can come in, well, that'll determine the next couple of weeks.
Just on Rampy again, so if he wants to go on, he will, or is that still something you've got to figure out?
Yeah, we'll sit down and just openly talk about it. And we've done that about the second half of the year. We've always said we'll speak about it later on in the year, and that won't change.
What about from you, mate? Obviously, it's not how you wanted your first season head coaching to go. How have you sort of had a chance to reflect on the season as a whole, or will that come later?
No, it'll come later. My job is to make sure that I can get this group as prepared as I possibly can for this week. One thing I'll reflect, you certainly try and do it briefly, but you'll have a good reflection at the end of the year about things we need to work on, what I can improve on. There's plenty of areas that need growth, and that'll come with the end of the season when that happens.
Errol 100 this week. You played with some pretty good midfielders across your time over at West Coast. Where does Errol sit in terms of what he's managed to do in his first 100 games? Obviously, a couple of Australians. He's verging on the score involvement record after 100 games, beating Chad to the post there. I mean, what is it about Errol that has put him apart already after just 99 games?
His appetite to always want to improve. I think on the field, off the field, he does whatever he possibly can to be the best footballer. His preparation for a young player is as good as I've seen. He works as hard as the best players do, and that's why he's had so many of those individual achievements in the first part. And his desire, desperation to every day come to work, get better.
Can you compare him to any of the mids you played with?
Oh, they're all different. I think that's one thing I never try and do is compare eras or players. One thing a lot of them do is they have those traits. And Errol's no different to some of the best ones I've played with and seen. So, yeah, it's been a pretty special 100, and hopefully there's another pretty special couple hundred.